So we just wrapped up talking about a few different things, but the main thing that we touched on is assumptive questions and the power that they have to reposition you on the call, going away from just the typical icky salesperson feel.
Yeah, it's one of many mechanisms that you can use to advance a call. We talked about some examples as to how to use it. We talked about when to potentially use it as well, and where that can take you when contrasted with the alternative, and how that's in your best interest and the prospect's best interest, and can lead to opening calls up and advancing calls, which we're all about. And we did touch on our favourite subject, which is not being an icky, pushy, nasty salesperson as well. We had to, and we even mentioned jiu-jitsu again. So there's a bit in this call.
Yeah, a bit of usual unscripted, but we might pull apart some different questioning types in the coming weeks. And if there's anything that you want to see, just chuck a comment down below.
I want to talk about assumptive questions. Is that true?
So when I've been doing a lot more cold calling lately, so
Mm-hmm.
when I cold call someone, before I do, I'll look up the company, chuck it in ChatGPT, and just say who is the registered owner of this company.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I cold call them, it's just say I'll just the usual introduction. Like I don't do the hectic controlling ones because I'm not usually speaking to a gatekeeper. It's just a person at the facility. It's not that kind of industry that I work in.
Yep.
It's just, hey, I was chatting to so and so, and they suggested I give you a call. We're doing a
Yep.
bit of work with them now. They also told me that Michael is the best person to speak to. Is that correct?
Yep.
Going in with that assumptive of like, yes, I have a bit of an educated idea from ChatGPT, but even if it's wrong, they're gonna be like, oh no, that's actually Terry that you need to have a chat to. Gotcha.
Yep.
Terry's position. So that's how I've been using it lately, but I've been using it in a lot of different ways in and areas for a good while. So I thought it's a good topic we could pull apart.
Sure. No worries. We can talk about that. I presume we started the call then. What aspect of that do you want to talk about? Or do you
Just
think our
highlighting the
list?
power of assumptive questions because they
Yep.
kind of one
Should we
for
should we should we clarify what an assumptive question is first? Because some people wouldn't have heard that terminology before.
so an assumptive question is essentially where you assume something and then they either agree with it or they correct you.
Yep.
And there's a lot of different ways that you can actually apply it, but it's essentially you're asking a question and you're assuming something in it.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. There's a self awareness that you're doing that, as opposed to perhaps being a leading question and you're not even aware you're doing that, or it's coming across that way. You have a high degree of self awareness. I know I'm baking in an assumption into this question, but I'm also leaving space for them to tell me no, that's not right, or close but not close enough, or agree with the premise. So that would be how I would describe it, which I think is similar to what you said. Yeah, no, very effective tool. I use them all the time as well. It's really good. Well, it can be really good in a lot of different situations. Maybe we should talk about some of the situations where it's good in. You're obviously using it in cold calling at the moment.
The first time I used it, or the first one I used it, was selling a program to very successful men that weren't showing up for themselves. They weren't showing up for
Yep.
their partners, their kids, all of that sort of stuff.
I
And
remember when you had that. Yep.
yeah, and one big component of that was there's a network, there's association,
Yep.
you have connection with other men who understand you. And the
Yep.
thing that I noticed most of the time in these sales calls is these guys didn't have anyone that they could talk to. They didn't have
Yep.
a network. So my question then became one, it was to ascertain whether or not they're fit for the program, but two, then build a desire for what will later be fulfilled with the program. But the assumptive question was when you speak to your close mates about this, what do they say?
Hmm.
And then they have to, same thing every time. There's, I don't have anyone that I can talk
Yep.
to about this.
Yep.
Did you say you don't have anyone? I don't have any mates that I can talk to about this.
Yep.
Versus, do you have any friends you could talk to about this? Then they're like, oh, of course I've got friends. Everyone has friends.
Exactly. Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
different outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. Very different. So what for those that are new to this type of questioning, they were two different answers with very different energy behind the answers as to what the prospect could give. And that felt like a pretty realistic example there. What's going on with those two different answers, and how does that benefit us as a salesperson?
So the first answer, you have them actually accept that, well, they corrected you for one, and you
Yeah,
have them accept that, oh, no, I actually don't have any of
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Whereas the second one, if you ask someone whether or not they have any friends, or if you ask, it's like asking a kid if they're popular at school. Like, yeah, of course I'm popular. I got heaps of friends. That
yeah,
doesn't really leave.
Yeah.
In a situation like that, you're allowing the prospect to save face in a certain element and not become massively reactive.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned face saving because I was going to go there as well. Yeah, the way the second question is structured, hence they got defensive.
And it's
You're kind of asking
do
them, "Are
you
you a
have
loser or not?"
friends? Yeah.
Yeah, are you which is kind of code for "Are you a loser or not?" Even if they don't have a lot of friends, they're not going to answer, "I don't have any friends," because in order to do that, they're simultaneously answering the question while simultaneously putting the hand up, effectively saying, look at the loser over here in the corner. And, their ego, their self-protection mechanisms are going to kick in. And even if that's the truth, they're not going to answer that question truthfully to protect themselves. And fair enough, I probably wouldn't either. To a stranger who's maybe a similar age to you, the same sex as you, I probably wouldn't either because, well, it feels dangerous on many, many levels. Whereas if you structure the question the other way, even if they answer honestly, it doesn't imply they're a loser. It might just imply that, yeah, I've got friends, but I haven't spoken to them about that. And then you can get into that. And then you can still keep being assumptive. Is that because you haven't thought of it yet? Or when you tried to speak about it, they shut it down or something else? So there's some baked in assumptions in the question, but I'm leaving plenty of space for them to go, no, it's none of those things. It's actually ABC. Oh, interesting. Can we talk about that? Yeah, sure. What's going on with ABC? So it actually creates an environment where it's easier and safer for them to answer honestly as a start point, and then on the back of that, it's more likely you get the truth and then the complete picture with a bit of further clarification. Much better conversation. One conversation generates forward momentum and gets us somewhere. The other is probably pulling teeth for both parties. It's pulling teeth for me because I'm getting awful answers, and they're really hating this interview or whatever you want to call it, conversation exchange, sales call, whatever. So it's a very effective mechanism, especially when you go into new territory or we're early in the discussions and we're trying to put some markers down, where are we going to take this? It's really good as an early conversational tool, I find. I use it every day.
Even on if you're selling an e-com offer or something like that, one thing that I ran into early days was they'd be like, "Oh, my cousin Tony does this," or "I've got a
Yeah,
friend who actually does this." And
yeah,
I wanted to start weeding that out early. So very similar thing when you speak to other people in your network that have already achieved, say back whatever they've said, 500K a month or whatever it is. What do they say you should do in this situation? And they say,
yeah,
oh no, I don't have anyone. So there's no one you could turn to or talk about this sort of stuff.
yeah,
No, obviously community is going to be part of whatever you're selling.
yeah,
And then say, no worries. So with how far you've gone through it this far, how did you figure out the point? Oh, I kind of just stumbled and fell forward. Gotcha. How's that going for you? Not great. And then that's the ability question of, if you've kind of stumbled this far and got to the point, what's the rationale behind getting some support now with us, as opposed to trying to figure it out by yourself or kicking the can down the road? It kind of opens up this full sequence of questions that can come afterwards as soon
yeah.
as they accept that, one, they don't have anyone they can turn to, or two, they don't have the ability to do it themselves.
Yep. 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 In a way, it takes the focus when you're doing what you're doing with those examples. It takes the focus off the real question itself, which makes it more likely they'll actually answer the real question. Because, when you spoke to your friends, what did they say? He's focused on what did they say. But your question is, did you speak to anyone about it, really? No, I didn't speak to anybody. Whereas if you just said, have you spoken to anyone about this? No, 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 no. That's probably a bad example. But it shifts the focus. My point there is it shifts the focus. And that's
It's
very
more, it's
powerful.
the same thing as the other one. Do you have anyone else, or do you have high achievers in your network that can help you?
Yes, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
they don't want to sound like a loser.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Whereas instead of asking that question, using the assumptive model, you could say, when you spoke to people further ahead of you in the journey, what was the one piece of advice you really took to heart? Oh, I don't have anyone higher than me in my journey. Oh, you don't? Oh, okay. So you got them there that way. Very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. It's very easy to answer that way of questioning honestly and openly, as I said earlier, because it's safe and you probably don't lose face. And they're
Even
probably somewhat
like
aware of
if
what
you're
they're doing
selling
as well.
a physical product, so when issues happen and you call your current supplier,
That's right.
what do they say you should do? They don't answer their phone.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Which helps them have a realization. Because they might not have ever consciously thought of that. Oh, I don't have a supplier who doesn't answer their phone. Their thoughts have just never gone there.
Mm.
We don't know, we don't know. But when you structure the question that way, they have that realization. And then when they say, oh, I don't have a current supplier, and then you might throw in another assumptive question on top of it. Is that because you don't want one or you haven't found the right one yet? Oh, I didn't even know I needed one. Do I need one? And then you start to have that conversation. So they're having realizations. These things bring them close, can bring them closer to you. It makes it very powerful as well because the questions you're asking are taking them to a place they hadn't been or couldn't get to on their own. And on the back of that, they're probably getting new thoughts, new insights, new feelings, which probably then leads to new clarity, which probably then leads to new decisions or outcomes or commitments. So sales is just change. We're helping them go through a change experience. And because we're the ones that are walking them there, we become very credible and very valuable when this is done right, which are not words typically associated with a typical salesperson, credible and valuable. So you move into a whole different category.
It also, I understand this expression. The expression sheepdogging means different things in different cultures. So in Australia, it kind of means to like push someone into a corner.
Okay.
Whereas when I mention that to Americans, they see that as like being guided. But most questions that you see on pretty much every sales program is guided or designed to push someone into a corner, and they feel it. They know what's going on.
Of course they do. Leading questions. Does that
Yeah.
sound like a good idea?
How
Do you
does
think
that
you'd
make
like
you
that
feel?
too?
Why is this so
Yeah.
important to you? On a scale of
Yeah.
1 to 10, they know,
Yeah. Of
they can feel it.
course
Whereas
they
when you're doing things like this, it doesn't feel that way. Feels like you have genuine curiosity and actually care about what's going on, which most of the time you probably do.
the way we were just sort of caricaturing a minute ago is the push approach. The other one is we're actually creating space, and they then step into that space. It's fundamentally different. If I push you into space, you have one sensation. If I create space and then you see it and choose to walk into it, you have a completely different sensation. We're doing the latter with this approach, of course.
It's
Yeah,
very. We haven't done a jujitsu expression for a good while, but
and for ages.
when you're rolling with someone that's just begun, like you can hit a submission on them, and you don't have to mask it at all because they don't know what's going on. And then like that's what it was like. I'd say in 2016, 17, before everyone had been exhausted by high ticket sales calls. And then it got to the point where it's like, oh, they know what they're about to do. So you have to do two or three sequences, moves, get a reaction out of them in order to get what you actually want.
That's right.
Um, what's I suppose chess is another one.
Yes, you have to do non-cookie cutter, non-predictable, non-played out, non-cliche things that they see coming a mile away. If you want to use chess as an analogy, my son's really in the chess now, so I'm playing chess with him and learning as he is learning. But you're looking to try and understand moves. Well, when you're at my level, 3 or 4 moves ahead. When you're at master level, I don't know, 20 levels ahead or 20 steps ahead. You're looking for patterns. You're looking to predict it. This is why I wrote today about this, not to take this off on a tangent, but I don't use, we've talked about this on a podcast before. I don't like the word feel typically on a sales call. How does that make you feel? Do you feel this would actually get you there? It's so played out. It's so cliche. It's so predictable. You see it coming a mile away. You feel what they're trying to do. That creates resistance and friction. Why? Because it stops being safe and it starts to get me thinking, this is all about you getting a sale, isn't it? It doesn't matter what I think or what I need or what I want. That all creates resistance. So what we're talking about here are pattern interrupts, are non-predictable ways of structuring questions. It lands different, it feels different, it takes them to different places. All these things give you a higher chance of advancing the call and not shutting it down, of course, which is what we're all about.
Absolutely. And even again, keeping on the analogies, as you were saying, like the word feel, there are certain things that subconsciously will trigger anyone, especially on a sales call.
Yep,
Um, feel is one of those words, and
yep,
important and impact. I think
yep.
they're three words that, I mean, one, I think they're really lazy because if you ask someone how important it is versus finding out, you're trying to skip all of the steps that are most important. And if you want to know how someone feels, again, you need to extract that through conversation, not just a one line question. But I think
Yep.
they are just things that subconsciously uh, they click prospects to be like, oh, dealing with a salesman, almost forgot.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like I literally wrote about it today. The word feel is almost my biggest cardinal sin as far as a word goes on a sales call. And most students that I have come into my program, I'd say like almost all of them, maybe even all of them, have trained elsewhere, which is fine. I've trained with many people, and it's one of the first things I have to share my views on as to how and why I don't like it and what better alternatives are. Then they can decide what they prefer. But they're so heavy on feel. I had 2 or 3 new guys come in this week, and yeah, same again. Like so heavy on feel. Do you feel this will get you to? Do you feel that if we could find? And do you feel that when you speak to her, it's like feel. It's so played out. It feels so salesy. Anyway, tangent over. We've covered that in a different call, but this is very much, as I said a minute ago, let's pattern interrupt it. Let's keep the conversation feeling tailor-made, customized, adapted to them. Let's use language that people actually use. And let's take them to places that they weren't expecting to go, maybe haven't ever been before. And then let's see where they land when they're there. It's probably somewhere interesting and possibly somewhere that leads closer to a sale. And just feels clean. This is the other thing too to not discount. So there's 2 parts. Effectiveness, does it work? More often than not. And does it feel good? And when I say feel good, like does it feel clean from our end? In the sense that when I deliver it, I don't kind of cringe or die inside or like, oh, I hope no one saw that or heard that, or I hope no one I respect is listening to this call. So it needs to feel clean on delivery. That way you can deliver an authentic, present, comfortable version of yourself. And you want them on the other end to feel clean from their end, like not like they need a shower, because they're dealing with an icky, pushy, dirty salesperson. So to me, it meets both those criteria. The assumptive question, when done well, which are examples were done very well before.
I was actually watching a doco yesterday on HBO. It was about the pharmaceutical industry and what happened with some medication, but that's besides the point. And one thing that they brought up was it was a chart of the most trusted people in society and the least trusted people. And nurses, doctors, and pharmacists and teachers were top 4.
Yeah.
4 of the bottom 5 were types of salesperson, like car salesman, pharmaceutical salesman, everything like that, which I thought was really interesting and very accurate.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, we're up against that. But here's the good news: you can reroute that. You can create a different experience, and really, really quickly, they can stop looking at you and feeling that you're that sort of person. And the vast majority of your competition still can't do it, and that creates enormous opportunity for you on sales calls, and enormous opportunity for you to separate yourself from your competition as well, which in a positive way, which are both great things, and we're both all about that.
Perfect. Well, here's a good place to wrap it up. Assumptive questions and not being a Nicky salesman. So we'll see you on the
Yes.
next one.
See you then.